The 2024-25 Premier League season is now underway, and for us Chelsea fans that means a date with destiny at Stamford Bridge against the reigning English champions Manchester City in our first match of the season. Can we start the campaign off with a win? Let's find out. Lads, lasses and the rest of the masses, welcome back to the lead-in. Let's go. Before we go any further, in case you missed it, memberships are now available on the channel. For as low as 99p a month, you can become a member by clicking the join button below the video and unlock access to exclusive perks such as badges, emotes, and my members only Discord where I'll be running my FPL mini league where you can compete to win prizes, as well as watch bonus videos that I can't put here on YouTube, and more. I really hope to create a thriving community in the server, and the money goes directly to supporting me and the channel, so if you're interested, become a member today and join the masses. Now let's get back to the video. Let's firstly set the scene. It's Chelsea vs City, a fixture that we've seen very recently in pre-season, with the Blues unfortunately losing 4-2. I think we'll have done a lot of learning since that fixture, so although the Sky Blue outfit have bragging rights over us in that regard, I don't expect this game to play out the same way. Ahead of the new season, their team hasn't changed much, but the notable business they have made is that they've brought in Savinho from sister club Girona, James McAtee has returned from his loan spell, and Calvin Phillips, Taylor Harwood-Bellis, Tommy Doyle, and most importantly, Julian Alvarez have all gone out the door. Pre-season doesn't matter much, but it's interesting to look at City's form. They are coming into the new season off of the back of a relatively successful run. Despite losing their first 3 games, they bounced back by not only beating us, but by winning the Community Shield by beating Manchester United on penalties. They'll be looking to continue that success into this fixture against us. That being said, let's take a look at the possible lineup for this City team and see what we will be up against. Firstly, let's talk absentees. The champions are without a few key names. Exciting youngster Oscar Bob has broken his leg and will be out for multiple months, so no involvement for him. Rodri is out with a hamstring issue that he suffered during the Euros, and the English trio of John Stones, Kyle Walker and Phil Foden all haven't been in training long enough to feature here, as they recently missed the Community Shield tie. I'll be putting Pep Guardiola's side into that classic 4-1-4-1 formation he used to win the league 4 times in a row, with the team much stronger than the one we faced in pre-season. First up in goal though is going to be their number 1 choice, Ederson. There was uncertainty over his future this summer, but it seems as if the Brazilian will be staying for another season, fortunately for them. The defence is incredibly strong despite the loss of Walker and Stones, so starting on the right it's going to be Rico Lewis, who has really grown into this role as of late. The centre-back partnership is one we've seen a lot over the last season. Manuel Akanji plays alongside Ruben Diaz in the right and left centre-back spots respectively. Finally, on the left of the defence will be Josko Gvardiol, who will most likely invert from that wider position. Moving into the midfield, we'll start with a deeper midfielder. As Rodri is unable to play, I expect to see ex-Chelsea man Mateo Kovacic slot in here as his replacement. Ahead of him, let's start on the right. I expect the new signing Savinho to start here as a replacement for Oscar Bob. Centrally, we should see the incredibly dangerous duo of Bernardo Silva on the right and Kevin De Bruyne on the left, and finishing off the line on that left flank will likely be Jeremy Doku. Finally, up top in the striker role, it's last season's top goalscorer Erling Haaland to lead the line as ever. That's just a brief look at what their team could look like. As it's the first match of the season, I'd expect a number of changes after half time as well. Now let's turn our attention to Chelsea and see what our lineup for this game could be. For the first time maybe ever, we have an entirely fit squad according to our new head coach. The only player not available for this fixture is captain Reece James, who despite having a small hamstring knock, wouldn't have been able to play anyway as he is suspended for this game following his red card at the end of last season. I'll be putting Enzo Maresca's Chelsea team in the 4-3-3 formation once again, and I'm going to be fielding what I personally believe is our strongest 11 possible with all of our players available. Starting with the goalkeeper, I'm going to be putting in Robert Sanchez. He seemed very comfortable against Inter in our last game, and despite how good new signing Philip Jurgensen has looked, it seems as if Maresca has chosen the Spaniard to be his first choice. For the back 4, this is going to change ever so slightly. As Reece James is not available, Malo Gusto starts at right back once again, looking to continue his fantastic form from last season. The centre-back duo will be what we've been seeing lately, with Wesley Fofana starting on the right and Levi Colwill starting on the left. Finally, over on the left I'm going to be putting in Renato Veiga. This is more of a hope than a prediction in truth. I expect Cucurella to actually play here, but I personally think Veiga is better suited for this particular game. Moving into the midfield, we'll start with holding role. Romeo Lavia makes his first competitive start for Chelsea an entire year after we signed him. Ahead of him, I expect to see new signing Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall on the right, with vice-captain Enzo Fernandez starting and captaining the side on the left. Ahead of them in the attacking roles, let's start on the right. Our best player last season and the only player to be nominated for both the PFA Young Player of the Year and PFA Players Player of the Year, it's last season's Young Player of the Season, Cole Palmer. On the opposite side, despite him joining relatively recently, I'm going to be putting new signing Pedro Neto straight into the team at left wing, though admittedly a bench appearance is more likely. Up top will be Nicholas Jackson. We saw glimpses of his brilliance against Inter last time out, and though Mark Guiu has been leading the line well in pre-season, I expect Jackson to remain our starting striker, hoping to improve on his impressive goal tally from last season. Now, as I have been doing in these videos, let's touch on a few substitutes I'd like to see Enzo Maresca make in this game. We get to make 5 substitutes per Premier League match, so the 5 players I'd like to see get some involvement are the aforementioned Mark Guiu, Christopher Nkunku, Tosin, Moises Caicedo and Noni Madueke. Apart from that, I think this is a solid team and should be enough to get a positive performance here, even though the opposition we face are a very tough team. So those are my lineups, and I'd love to hear from you guys too. So for today's comment question of the day, answer me this. Simple one for the first match, what is your score prediction for this one, and who scores the goals? Let me know in the comments down below with QOTD at the start as always, and I'll heart my favourite answers. Now let's take a look at how Chelsea can navigate this game tactically, and see how we can beat City in this game. So here we have the team, and I think this game is going to be much closer than a lot of people expect, and I think we've been written off far too quickly. I think a lot of people see that 4-2 scoreline in pre-season and expect City to go straight through us, and personally I think that's a bit disingenuous. If we look at the stats from that game, and I'll put them on the screen, we not only had the majority of possession, but created more big chances and had more total shots. And if we look at the momentum of the game, City pretty much just had 2 small spells of good play, and they were just clinical with them, and of course they were kind of gifted a soft penalty as well. Let's not talk about that though. We significantly improved in the second half when we played an actual attack and wasn't playing a false 9 and Nkunku, Mudryk on the right wing and Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall on the left wing. Full strength versus full strength, and without Rodri in the side, I think this game will be much closer than a lot of people are kind of giving us credit for. And part of that is down to the new slightly altered system, which I'll kind of go over now. Obviously we always see us move into this 3 at the back system, and usually we've been seeing it with an inverted right back, but I think we're not going to be doing this as much anymore. I think that we're going to kind of adjust as Enzo has kind of seen how this team plays out. We're going to kind of adjust accordingly. So obviously what we've been seeing is Colwill moving into the centre of defence, with Fofana going out to this right hand side, and whoever is on this left hand side. I put Vega here because I think he is more of a centre back and he kind of suits this more. I think he'll have a bit more success up against their right winger than Kukurea would. And from here we kind of see this diamond form, right? Instead of this box that we've kind of been seeing, we see Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall move up into this kind of 10 position, Gusto playing this right centre mid position, Enzo playing this left centre mid position, and Lavia at the base. And see, this is kind of a different setup to the one we've been seeing, and the reason why I think this is going to give us a bit more success is not only because, as I kind of highlighted in previous videos, the ability for us to pass out of the back is much easier with having these 3 deeper players rather than just the 2 deeper players. And obviously one of the things we suffered really badly against City in pre-season was the fact that they pressed us so well and we didn't really have enough options to kind of get out. Now what we can see here is that if we put the players in here, and the way that they kind of set up is in this 4-1-4-1 with Haaland here, and obviously this will be Kovacic. They usually, when they're defending, they set up with this 4-1-4-1. Obviously when they're attacking, they usually invert one of the defenders, whether that's Gvardiol, who's playing on the left hand side, or more likely it's going to be a Kanji who will kind of move into this role and make this 2. And if we put them in that way, so we can kind of get a grasp of how this is going to play out, usually we have this when we don't have Enzo dropping deep here and he's up the pitch, we have this 5v5, so they can always match up against us, and the only player that's spare is the goalkeeper. Obviously if they press really hard and really smartly, we can't really play out, and that's an issue that we kind of struggled with against City in pre-season. But with Enzo dropping deeper, we now have an extra option. So as we move the ball and as the team kind of shifts around, there's always going to be the extra man, right? We always have the man advantage here, so whether that's Enzo who drops deep and doesn't get tracked because, say, this player is trying to track Lavia instead, he can pick up the ball and then we've got this space to kind of drive into. Or again, that's just another example. Obviously, if we play through Lavia, say we get the ball out here with Lavia, and if Haaland now presses him, obviously we now have this option to play to Colwill, and then Colwill can obviously progress us forward from there. And obviously this is going to adapt as the game plan adapts, and if they kind of see this happening quite a lot, I would imagine that one of the central defenders, or the central midfielders rather, which will probably be Kovacic, would probably come up and try and join the press too. But I think they'll be wary of the threat that we have in behind, especially with our full strength attack. Obviously Jackson, we know how good Jackson is on the transition, we know how good Palmer can be on the transition. Pedro Neto, we can see how well he can be on the transition too. Obviously I haven't really spoken about him much. I think he's going to be an excellent addition to the side, and I think that's one of the weakest points in our team was left wing. It was basically left back and left wing. This whole left side was really, really weak. Now we've kind of gotten a stronger left-hand side, and I think that's going to benefit us very likely, because one of the things is Jackson, despite the amount of goals that he scored, and the amount of chances he misses, he didn't really ever seem, which is weird considering how many chances we had, but it didn't really seem like he ever got the service from specifically the left-hand side, right? We'd obviously be seeing him get service on the right-hand side, but from the left, it kind of always seemed like when the ball went out to the left, we never really hit anyone in the middle, whereas Neto, obviously we've seen how good he is at assisting, and if he can stay fit, obviously that's the big caveat here, is that his fitness has not always been the best. If he can stay fit from this left-hand side, I think he'll be a very good provider for Jackson. And as I said, I think a lot of people just kind of have written us off so quickly because of that preseason result. But I think we had moments in that game, especially in the second half with Madueke and Sterling, and those two playing on the transition. And I think that Enzo Maresca is a smart enough coach to understand that in this game, we cannot be expected to play the way that we want to with the possession. We're going to have to play through the press. We're going to have to play on the counter, or play through that press, or play on the transition once City have the ball. Obviously, Haaland is always going to be a nuisance. We know how he'll I predicted him to score. That's a spoiler. I'm going to predict him to score because he always does. He obviously scored a hat-trick against us in pre-season. I just feel like this system that we're playing now with the extra player in midfield, I feel like is so much better suited for beating this City team than the one we were using before. And I didn't really explain it very well, so I'll kind of go over that again. But like, when we usually play with this five at the back, or this 5 players back, and we're trying to build out from the back, every single one of these players can get marked very, very easily by their front 5. And obviously they kind of play a similar way to we do with the 5 players left back, which will be the inverted defender, one of the centre mids, and then the rest of the defenders here, right? So when they press forward like this, and we obviously have Enzo and Kinnan Dewsbury Hall up here, they match us everywhere on the pitch, and obviously if they're going forward against us and we aren't able to find the pockets of space and find the passes through, they'll eventually get the ball back and they'll be able to punish us for it. And that's kind of what we saw in the preseason game. And as I kind of mentioned before, if we have that spare man, it makes it much easier for us to get out. And I think we're going to probably see that. I think one of the things that we have been very successful with throughout whole of preseason is being able to play out from the back at times and play through. We've seen a few of those kind of initial attacking movements be implemented, and obviously with time they will get better. Obviously this is a process, we know it's going to be a process. Switching from any manager to another manager is always a process to go through, but especially the absolute polar opposites that are Poch's complete chaos ball where we play everything in transition, and then Enzo Maresca's very close controlled possession football where we try and pass. It's such a the difference between the two is so large that it's going to take so much longer to kind of get used to. Luckily, I do think that we have the players to do that, and I think that the majority of the time, the majority of the players that we do have are more suited to Enzo's kind of philosophy than they were to Poch. And obviously we've kind of seen now, obviously with the recent news that Chilwell has kind of been exiled from the team as well. And it's kind of funny because I predicted pretty much all of this. Mystic Mac strikes again. But like, I predicted pretty much all of this, that all of the technical footballers that were good on the ball and able to pass, and they had a lot of control over the way they pass, would all start over the players that put in effort. Because that was the difference between Poch and Enzo, is that Poch really valued effort and drive and aggression and pressing. And even though we do press in this team, and we obviously have to do a counter press to kind of defend, and that's the way we kind of keep on top of teams and keep more possession. Obviously that's how we kept more possession against City in the preseason game. Even though that we have that press, the the main attributes that Enzo is looking for is those passing attributes. And obviously, if we can kind of see our way through these presses and get forward into the attacking areas, I have no doubt that this front three, Palmer, Jackson and Neto, they have goals in them. That's one thing which is very, very promising about this attack, and we've obviously seen Kieran Dewsbury-Hall in the Championship be very, very good at getting up the pitch, getting goals, getting assists. Enzo has already kind of shown that he can provide from this position that we've seen him in this deeper role, being able to play ball to the back post, to whether that was Madueke, who he obviously got an assist for, that could be Palmer if he's running behind, but more so, the main threat that I think we're going to have in this specific game is actually Malo Gusto. Now, I've kind of spoken about this before with the way that the system works, and I'm just going to get rid of these players just for clarity's sake. But the way that this kind of system has worked now, that we have Gusto playing as this right centre mid rather than a strictly a fullback or strictly a deeper midfielder in the inverted two, is the fact that he can get up the pitch. And obviously when we play Palmer here, Palmer will always come inside and open up this wide flank for Gusto to kind of run into. And obviously, if we have Gusto getting into these positions, he will always be able to make the overlap to this side. Once he's here, we know how good of a provider he can be to play balls across, or obviously play balls back to Palmer for shots outside the box. We know how good Palmer is at shots outside the box on that left peg. And I think with Gusto and his natural ability to get wide and stay wide, I think this setup will obviously, kind of, as we kind of alluded to multiple times in the past, it stretches the defence, obviously, because the fullbacks have to go out and face them. They can't just leave them there, or they'll just be free for passes. So once this happens, we get these spaces opening up, and obviously that leaves space for either Palmer to kind of drift into this situation. We get Enzo can kind of get into these positions as we kind of spoke about, but more so as well, Kieran Dewsbury-Hall can drift across. We know he's not going to stay in the centre. He's obviously going to come over here to make this triangle if he needs to be there, or he's going to be over on this side to make this triangle with Enzo or Vega if Vega gets up the pitch, though I think Vega is less likely to get up the pitch than Cucurella was. And we have kind of seen him play there and switch in balls in a few games in preseason, but I don't think that's particularly what we're going to see in this specific formation for this specific game. I think when we play with Palmer and Kieran Dewsbury-Hall in the team kind of plays a little bit differently than we kind of been seeing, because Palmer is obviously more of, or less of, a defensive player, and even though he will drop deep to collect the ball and come into this midfield role where Gusto kind of was, and let Gusto play on this wide side, I don't think he's particularly the player that's going to kind of like operate in this centre mid position. He's more likely to be over here in this inside 10 position where he can actually affect things. So I think that's basically where we're going to get most of our success, is from this right hand side with Gusto and Palmer. And I know that's pretty obvious to say considering how good they were last season, but not only that, but the fact that they will have to commit bodies over to this side to kind of deal with the constant threat of Gusto running in behind, as we've kind of been seeing, and or Caicedo, who can also play here, because Caicedo's kind of done that as well. Not only that, but once we get to the ball to Palmer, now it opens up this switch, right? We can now get the switch over to Neto or over to Enzo, who's going to be here. And I think that one of the things that we kind of been seeing from this team and the ability to pick out passes from these deep positions is that if we get the ball to Enzo on a switch very quickly and Neto is making this run inside, we can get the ball into the box much more easily. And obviously we all just have to be clinical, and I think that's the main thing in this game that I will say, is that we have to be more clinical, we have to be more switched on, and obviously we haven't had the most clinical striker up top this entire time. Marc Guiu is fantastic in the way that he runs, the way that he presses, the way that he puts himself about, but he hasn't shown that knack to finish well so far, whereas Jackson, even though he is not the greatest finisher and he should have got more goals last season, we all know that he will always get goals. That's the type of player he is. He will get goals. If we give the ball to him in the box, he will score at some point if we keep giving him the ball. So yeah, I think that pretty much kind of wraps up what I wanted to talk about in terms of the tactics. I think we'll have to wait and see whether this is enough to be able to beat City. Obviously, City are a fantastic team. No discrediting them. They are a fantastic team, and this will be a difficult game for us. I'm not saying that we're going to, if we do win this game, that it will be easy. It definitely won't be, but I just wanted to kind of put it out there that I think this game is much closer than a lot of people are saying. I suppose we'll just have to wait and see come match day. For a score prediction, I'm going to be predicting a shock victory for Chelsea. I'm going for a 2-1 result, with Palmer and Pedro Neto scoring our goals. For the opposition, I expect Haaland to bag at some point, so he's the obvious choice. We'll have to wait until the game to see if any of my predictions are correct, and as always, I'll be live streaming immediately after the game with Feeling Blue to review the match, so make sure you come through if you are able. But if you can't wait until then, YouTube reckons you'll enjoy one of these 2 videos on screen in the meantime. Thank you guys so much for watching as ever, and remember, in the rain or in the dry, keep that blue flag flying high. Come on, you Blues.